Good evening, dear students. Welcome to the English Canvas. Today we'll be discussing Sanjay Kumar Bag, one of the most significant contemporary Dalit literary voices from Odisha. He belongs to that generation of writers who have successfully used literature as a space of reclaiming dignity, identity, and cultural memory for the marginalized communities. He was born in 1976. His work embodies the voice of the oppressed, the neglected, and the silenced, reflecting deep empathy for the subaltern reality. Sanjay Kumar Bag's life itself is a narrative of struggle, humiliation, and resilience. These personal experiences later shaped the thematic core of his writing. He pursued his PhD from the University of Delhi with the specialization in folklore studies, which profoundly influenced his literary imagination. At present, he teaches at the Eastern Regional Language Center, Bhubaneswar. His academic grounding in folklore helped him to explore oral traditions, myths, and popular culture practices of Odisha and reinterpret them through the lens of Dalit consciousness. Sanjay Kumar Bag began his literary journey in 2001 primarily as a short story writer in Odia. His stories, written in simple yet powerful language, bring out the pain, resistance, and aspiration of Dalit community and present an unfiltered view of caste-based discrimination and social injustice. Some of his notable works include Barna Bodha O Madhu Babanka Katha. This is his first anthology of short story fiction. This collection captures the subtle tensions of caste and class within the socio-cultural fabric of rural Odisha. This Hindi translation of this anthology has been included in IGNOU MA syllabus, marking his recognition in the academic sphere. Um, there is one more anthology, Bir Nang Devi Ibang Jinjoli Dar Talara Katha. So that was announced soon after, further exploring the subaltern lives and folk narratives. Apart from the fiction, Sanjay Kumar Bag made significant contribution as a scholar of folklore. So his writing style is rooted in realism, but it also carries a deep emotional intensity. He does not romanticize rural life, instead, he portrays it as a space of conflict, oppression, and silent resistance. His major themes include caste based exploitation and discrimination, subaltern identity and cultural assertion, struggle for dignity and selfhood, interplay between folklore and lived experience, rural marginalization, and social hypocrisy. As a folklorist, he often blends oral traditions, myths, and folk tales into his narratives, using them as metaphors for Dalit suffering and collective memory. His works thus stand at the intersection of folklore and protest literature. So, in our syllabus, we have a short story Black Ink. The original Odia title is Kalasayahi, that captures Sanjay Kumar Bag's realistic depiction of a Dalit village or a settlement, a microcosm of caste oppression. Through the village life, he portrays how social hierarchies, ritual exclusion, and cultural stigmas define the lives of Dalits even today. So, Kalasayahi becomes not just a story of one place but a symbolic landscape of India's caste bound social order. So, Sanjay Kumar Bag is widely appreciated as one of the most perspective recorders of subaltern reality in Odisha. His contribution lies in bringing the Dalit Odia experience into the mainstream literary discourse. His inclusion in university syllabi and translations into Hindi, Assamese, and English highlight his pan India appeal. So, by merging folklore studies with Dalit aesthetics, Bag has opened a new dimension in Indian literature, one that connects cultural roots with contemporary social consciousness. So, Sanjay Kumar Bag represents the new wave of Dalit intellectuals who combine creative writing with academic rigor. His writings mirror the pain and pride of his community while also offering a voice of hope and assertion. Through his pen, the marginalized becomes visible and the silenced find speech. He stands as a bridge between tradition and modernity, folklore and resistance, individual struggle and collective awakening. A voice that truly makes contemporary Odia literature richer and more inclusive. So let's read the short story Black Ink or Kalasayahi, which means indelible ink, right? So plot summary of this short story is, so the story Black Ink is a powerful social and political satire about Dalit experience, democracy, and illusion of freedom in post independence India. The narrator recalls the life of his grandfather, Buddha Dada, a simple and innocent villager who lived through the transition from colonial rule to Indian independence. When Mahatma Gandhi visited their remote village on the day India became free, the people were overwhelmed but unable to understand what independence, what is democracy, or freedom really meant. To them, Gandhi was not a political leader but a divine being, a godlike figure whose steps made lotuses bloom. So, even after Gandhi declared that kingship is over, he said, kingship is over, and that people would now elect their own representatives, the old feudal system continued. The village landlord, called the Gontia, remained as powerful as ever, treating Dalits and poor peasants as his servants. So Buddha Dada worked on the Gontia's fields for free as did others, believing that this was the natural order. Later years, when India's first election were held, Buddha Dada learned about a new thing called voting. When he cast his vote and got a black ink mark on his finger, he felt proud, believing that this mark symbolized freedom and Gandhi's blessings. However, the truth was tragic. The Gondia manipulated the villagers, telling them that Gandhi had asked them to vote for certain symbols or candidates. The poor and uneducated people believed him and voted as instructed, thinking they were voting for Gandhi himself. So, as year passed, elections became a mockery of democracy. New leaders replaced the Gontia, bribing voters with food, liquor, and money. People still did not understand the meaning of democracy. They only knew that every election brought some gifts and a mark of black ink on their finger. Even when images of Gandhi appeared on currency notes, the villagers thought his bald head was a ghost returning to visit them. In the end, an old man named Sagadia Dadi, confused by the sight of Gandhi's image on the notes, thought Gandhi's spirit had returned to haunt the village and tried to bury the ghost by tearing up the notes. So, through these tragicomedy events, the story exposes the failure of India's democracy to reach the poor and marginalized. So, this is about the whole story of Black Ink. Let's talk about themes. So, the first theme is illusion of democracy. So, the story's central theme is the discrepancy between the ideal of democracy and its practice. Although Gandhi's dream was of equality and justice, the people in the story remain enslaved by the same old caste system and political manipulation. The villagers think that they are free, but in truth, they are still controlled by the powerful. Second theme is caste and oppression. So the story vividly portrays the continuing caste hierarchy in the rural India. Even after independence, Dalits and landless peasants work as bonded laborers. The so-called freedom never reaches them. The Gontia remains a symbol of upper caste dominance and oppression. Right? The third is uh, blind faith and ignorance. So the villagers' inability to understand Gandhi's teachings lead to blind devotion. They see Gandhi as a god, not as a reformer. They see Gandhi as a god only. So their faith is pure but uninformed, which allows others to exploit them in the name of religion and patriotism. The fourth theme is corruption and political hypocrisy. So post independence elections become tools of corruption. Politicians use Gandhi's name and symbols to deceive the masses. The black ink mark of democracy turns into a symbol of ignorance and manipulation. The fifth theme is lost ideals of Gandhi. So, through irony, the story highlights how Gandhi's ideals are what? Gandhi's ideals are equality, truth, non-violence, and service, right? And these ideals of Gandhiji have been distorted in the story. So Gandhi's image remains everywhere on the currency notes and election speeches, but his messages, the messages have disappeared, right? So there are lots of lost ideals of गांधी जी हर जगह हैं, मतलब नोट्स पर हैं, इलेक्शंस की स्पीचेस में हैं, लेकिन उनके जो आइडियल्स हैं इक्वालिटी, ट्रुथ, नॉन वायलेंस और सर्विस, वो तो कहीं भी नहीं है. उनके तो जितने भी मैसेजेस उनके आइडियल्स हैं वो है ही नहीं, लॉस्ट हो चुके हैं. नाउ विल टॉक अबाउट द सिम्बल्स ऑफ द स्टोरी. द फर्स्ट इज ब्लैक इंक. So the black ink mark symbolizes both hope and irony. For Buddha Dada, it represents democracy and Gandhi's blessing, right? But for the reader, for us, as the reader, it symbolizes deception and the failure of democracy. It's a mark of illusion rather than empowerment, right? The second symbol is Gandhi's image. So Gandhi's bald head on currency notes symbolizes the commercialization of Gandhi's ideals. His image has become a political and monetary symbol, not a moral guide. When Sagadia Dadi, there is a character, she mistakes it for Gandhi's ghost. It reflects how Gandhi's real spirit no longer lives in Indian politics. The nine layered sacred thread. If you read the story line by line, you will go through this symbol, the nine layered sacred thread. So Gontia is a character. His sacred thread represents caste purity, Brahminical dominance, and when the villagers touch it, believing it's a holy act. It shows how caste-based reverence continues even in the age of democracy. The banyan tree. So the tree under which Gandhiji sat becomes a symbol of lost enlightenment. This is a tree once associated with wisdom, now merely a site of corrupted elections. Now we'll go through the character analysis. First, Buddha Dada, the grandfather of the narrator. So he is a simple man. He is an honest and innocent villager. Buddha Dada he represents. This character represents the Dalit and the rural poor of India. He deeply admires Gandhiji but never understands the meaning of freedom or the meaning of democracy. His faith is sincere but blind. His character evokes sympathy and pity. He is a victim of a system but that betrays his trust. The second character is Gontia, the landlord. He represents the continuation of feudal power in post-independence India. Despite Gandhiji's declaration that kingship had ended, He acts as a modern day king, manipulating religion and Gandhi's name to control the villagers. He is cunning, hypocritical, and self serving. Sagadia Dadi. So she is a confused old woman who mistakes Gandhi's image on currency for a ghost. His ignorance symbolizes the failure of education and awareness among the poor. His final act of tearing the notes reflects the frustration and helplessness of those who still wait for Gandhi's real return. There's one more character, Harris's son. So he represents the new age of corrupt politician. Though he speaks about democracy and equality, he too used caste, religion, manipulation to win votes, and his hypocrisy shows that nothing really changes, only the faces of the oppressors. So the overall message for this short story, Black Ink, is um, it exposes the tragic irony of Indian democracy, and that political independence did not bring social justice. The Dalits and rural poor remain victims of ignorance and exploitation. Gandhi's ideals of truth and equality are placed by sorry Gandhi's ideals of truth and equality are replaced by greed, bribery, and hypocrisy. The story is both tragic and satirical, showing how freedom without education and awareness is meaningless. Through Buddha Dada's innocence and symbolism of the black ink, Sanjay Kumar Bag reminds readers that the spirit of Gandhiji has been lost, which is replaced by mere rituals and political deceit. So Sanjay Kumar Bag's Black Ink is not only a story about one village, it's a reflection of modern India. It questions whether true independence has ever reached the marginalized. With subtle humor and deep irony, the story portrays how democracy has turned into another form of oppression for those left behind. So, black ink, meant to symbolize freedom, becomes a mark of betrayal, a stain that refuses to fade. Now, we'll discuss the previous year questions of this short story. The first question is, how does black ink shed light on Dalit subalternity in mainstream politics? So Sanjay Kumar Bag's short story Black Ink, originally Kalasayahi, is a poignant political satire that explores the paradox of freedom and democracy in post independence India. It's a narrative of promise and betrayal, a tale that begins with the dream of liberation but ends in the harsh realization of its illusion. So, through the use of irony, symbolism, and satire, Sanjay Kumar Bag exposes the persistent structures of caste, ignorance, and exploitation that continue to enslave the marginalized even in the age of supposed freedom. So, the first point you can add in your answer, in your answer that is the promise of freedom. So the story opens with Buddha Dada, the protagonist's grandfather, recalling the day Mahatma Gandhiji visited their village. For him and other villagers, Gandhi's presence symbolized divine grace and hope. उनके लिए गांधी जी कोई रिफॉर्मर नहीं थे, वो एक उनके लिए डिवाइन थे, बस डिविनिटी थे, मतलब डिवाइन क्रीचर थे उनके लिए. सो इंडिपेंडेंस, डेमोक्रेसी एंड फ्रीडम appeared as a sacred promises that would end their centuries old suffering. However, this However, this promise was poorly understood by the rural people. To them, Gandhi was not a reformer or a political visionary, but a godlike figure, and independence was a mythic event, not a socio-political transformation. So their reverence was genuine, but it lacked awareness. This sets the stage for the tragedy to unfold when faith without understanding turns into a tool for manipulation, right? Second point is betrayal of the promise. So, despite Gandhiji's declaration that kingship is over, the feudal structure remains intact. The village landlord, the Gontia, continues to exercise complete control over the lives of Dalits and peasants. He cleverly appropriates Gandhiji's message to maintain his power, deceiving the villagers into believing that voting according to his instructions is an act of obedience to Gandhi himself. Thus, independence merely replaces one master with another. The landlord and later the politician manipulate the masses, and the dream of democracy degenerates into another form of bondage. So the ink mark on Buddha Dada's finger, once seen as a sign of freedom, becomes the mark of deceit. Right? Third point is, so irony as the narrative undercurrent. So the story's power lies in its ironic tone. Every symbol of hope carries a hidden wound of betrayal. The black ink, meant to signify democratic empowerment, becomes the emblem of ignorance and manipulation. Gandhi's bald head on currency notes, mistaken for his ghost, reveals how Gandhi's ideals have been commodified. So the voting ritual, it celebrated as a right of citizens, turns into a farce controlled by the powerful. So Sanjay Kumar Bag's irony is subtle yet devastating. It exposes how the language of freedom has been hijacked to perpetuate oppression. Right? The fourth point is the persistence of bondage. Even decades after independence, the villagers continue to live in the illusion of liberty. Election brings gifts, liquor, and temporary excitement for them, but no real change in their lives. The story thus becomes a critique of Indian democracy, where ritualistic participation replaces genuine empowerment. This sustained betrayal is both political and moral. Political because the state has failed to deliver justice, and moral because the society continues to deny dignity to its most vulnerable members. Right? The fifth point is the black ink is a metaphor of irony. So the title itself encapsulates the story's irony. For Buddha Dada, the black ink is a sacred mark, which is Gandhiji's blessing. For the reader, however, it symbolizes the dark stain of disillusionment. It is indelible not because it signifies freedom, but because it represents the unchanging fate of the oppressed. So the ink that was meant to record democracy instead writes the history of betrayal. So these are the points. These are the key points. You can use these points to write a good and effective answer to get good scores in your exam. To use these key points, you can conclude your answer, and you can write, black ink is there, a story of unfulfilled promises, of freedom that never arrived, and democracy that never included the poor. Sanjay Kumar Bag turns an apparently simple rural tale into a profound political allegory. The story's irony deepens as emotional resonance as readers witness how the ideals of Gandhiji, which are equality, truth and justice and non-violence, which are hollowed out and commercialized. The villagers' faith remains pure, but the system they trust betrays them. Ultimately, Sanjay Kumar Bag's Black Ink stands as a mirror reflecting India's moral decay, where the promise of independence has been overshadowed by corruption, casteism, and ignorance. It is this gap between dream and reality, between ink and truth, that defines enduring irony of the story. So, to write a good answer, you can begin the theme identification, that is promise versus betrayal. You can integrate symbolic references like black ink or Gandhi's image. You can highlight the irony in your answer, that as the central literary device, and end your answer with a critical reflection on democracy and disillusionment. Right, now we'll discuss question number 2. Analyze symbolic significance of waiting for Gandhiji in Sanjay Kumar Bag's Black Ink. So Sanjay Kumar Bag's Black Ink is an incisive exploration of Dalit subalternity within the framework of Indian democracy. Through the rural experience of Buddha Dada and his community, Sanjay Kumar Bag demonstrates how political independence and electoral democracy have failed to dismantle the deep rooted caste hierarchy, yeah, right, and the systematic marginalization of Dalits. The story becomes a powerful social critique, revealing that the political empowerment promised by independence remains an illusion for oppressed classes. So, the first point you can add in your answer, that is the concept of subalternity in context. The term subaltern, as defined by Antonio Gramsci and later expanded by Gayatri Chakravarti Spivak, refers to those groups that are socially, politically, and culturally silenced within hegemonic structures. But in this short story, Black Ink, the Dalits of the village exemplify this subaltern condition. They are visible yet voiceless, participants in democracy but excluded from genuine agency. Their subalternity is not just economic but epistemic. They are denied the power to know, interpret, or speak for themselves. Right? Second is caste as the continuation of colonial power. So Sanjay Kumar Bagh draws a parallel between colonial oppression and caste oppression. The departure of the British does not liberate the Dalits. It merely transfers authority to the Gauntia, the upper class landlord who continues to dominate village life. Although Gandhiji proclaims that kingship is over, the feudal order remains untouched. The Gauntia and the later the local politicians perpetuate the same cycle of exploitation and servitude, proving that independence has not reached the margins. Thus, Bagh exposes how mainstream politics reproduces caste hierarchies under the guise of democracy. Right? Third is illiteracy and political manipulation. So Buddha Dada and his fellow villagers who are unaware of the true meaning of democracy, and they have become easy targets of political manipulation, right? So the act of voting, which symbolized by the black ink mark, should represent empowerment, but in their case it reflects ignorance, dependence, and deceit. They vote as instructed by the Gauntia and believing that they are following Gandhi's will. This act revealed that the tragic irony of Dalit participation in politics. They are included numerically yet excluded intellectually and ideologically, and their inclusion is not ritualistic but not substantive. Right? Fourth point is appropriation of Gandhi's image. So the story brilliantly captures how mainstream politics co-opts Gandhi's image to legitimize power structures. Gandhi becomes not a moral compass but a political brand. His image on currency notes and election campaigns turns his ideals into instruments of deception. The villagers' confusion, mistaking Gandhi's portrait of his ghost, becomes a metaphor for how the true spirit of Gandhian equality has been buried. The ghost of Gandhiji thus represent the specter of betrayed ideals, haunting a democracy that has abandoned in its conscience. Right. Fifth key point is the silence of the subaltern. Through Buddha Dada's simple voice, Sanjay Kumar Bag articulates the speechlessness of Dalit subaltern. Buddha Dada's inability to question the Gontia, to interpret Gandhi's words, or to comprehend his own oppression reflects Spivak's notion that the subaltern can't speak, not because they are mute, but because their voice is constantly mediated, translated, and appropriated by the powerful. So in this sense, Black Ink becomes not just a story about political corruption but a meditation on epistemic violence, the denial of knowledge, interpretation, and authorship to the marginalized. Right? Sixth point is the mockery of democracy. Sanjay Kumar Bag portrays elections as a ritual without substance, where votes are bought, sorry, wares are bought with the liquor and food, and where promises are replaced by propaganda. The Dalits' participation in this process does not signify empowerment but rather continued bondage in a new form. Mainstream politics, instead of being a vehicle for liberation, becomes an instrument of controlled participation, ensuring that the subaltern remains at the periphery of real decision making. Right. Seventh point is satire and irony as political tools. So this point describe Sanjay Kumar Bag uses this satire and irony to intensify his political commentary. The image of the villagers treating the ink mark as Gandhi's blessing, on mistaking Gandhi's face on currency for a ghost, conveys both humor and heartbreak. So the laughter is bitter. It stems from the painful recognition of how democracy mocks those it claims to represent. So to conclude, you can use these points and you can write in the conclusion that Black Ink lays bare the illusion of Dalit empowerment in mainstream Indian politics. By blending irony, realism, and folkloric simplicity, Bagh reveals that freedom without consciousness is another form of slavery. The Dalits in the story remain trapped in symbolic participation rather than actual power. Their voice their voices absorbed by the same structures that claim to represent them. Through this narrative, Bagh redefines Dalit literature as a discourse of resistance, one that questions not only caste oppression but also the moral bankruptcy of modern democracy. Thus, Black Ink stands as a compelling testament to the continuing subaltern condition of Dalits, visible in statistics, invisible in power, and a reminder that true liberation begins with awareness, not ritual. Right. Now we'll go to question number 3. This is the last question for this class. Critically investigate Black Ink as a story of promise and betrayal. Yes, and peppered with strong undercurrent of irony. One more thing is left to discuss in this answer, that is the waiting for Gandhiji. So, waiting for Gandhiji on a deeper level, the villagers waiting also symbolizes the absence of Gandhiji's spirit in contemporary India. So, we can add one more point for this answer. Yes, this is the point. Waiting as a symbol of moral absence. So, on a deeper level, the villagers waiting also symbolizes the absence of Gandhi's spirit In contemporary India, though his image appears everywhere on currency notes, on election poster, and political rhetoric, right? But his ethical messages of truth and equality has vanished. When the old men, when the old the Sagadier Dadi mistakes Gandhiji's image on the note for a ghost and tries to bury it. Sanjay Kumar Bag used this dark irony to suggest that Gandhi's ideal are dead and are buried while only his shadow continues to haunt the nation. So the waiting thus becomes a mourning for a lost conscience. A waiting for moral rebirth has never arrived, right? So this is a religious symbol waiting for Gandhi parallels religious waiting for divine intervention, reflecting how social justice in India has been spiritualized rather than politicized. The act of waiting critiques passive citizenship. People expect leaders to deliver justice instead of demanding accountability. The waiting becomes a coping mechanism, a way for the oppressed to sustain hope amidst despair, even when that is hope is hollow. So, in black ink, waiting for Gandhiji stands as one of the most profound symbols of post-colonial disillusionment. It encapsulates the distance between Gandhiji's moral promise and India's political reality, between freedom as an ideal, democracy as a fast. So the village's unending wait becomes the moral center of the story. So this is a reminder that India still waits for Gandhi's true return, not in body but in spirit. So through this powerful metaphor, Sanjay Kumar Bag transforms a simple village tale into a philosophical reflection on faith, failure, and forgotten ideals. So the story ultimately asks, if Gandhiji's soul has departed from the nature's conscious, then what are we still waiting for, right? So you can start your answer with Gandhiji as a symbol of hope, trace transformation, that is hope, illusion, and irony, and connect waiting to Dalit subalternity, historical delay of justice, right? And you need to discuss moral, political, and religious layers of symbolism here, right? चलिए अब लास्ट क्वेश्चन की तरफ चलते हैं. क्रिटिकली इन्वेस्टिगेट ब्लैक इंक एज अ स्टोरी ऑफ प्रॉमिस एंड betrayal peppered with strong undercurrent of irony, right? तो सबसे पहले इसमें हम बात करेंगे लाइक ब्लैक इंक प्रोवाइड्स अ critical insight into the subaltern condition of condition of Dalit in post independent India. तो फर्स्ट पॉइंट यहाँ पर रहेगा दलित एंड electoral manipulation, right? So the story illustrates how voting symbolized by the black ink mark becomes a tool of deception rather than empowerment. Buddha Dada and the other Dalits believe that they exercise democratic rights, but their choices are guided by the Gandhi or the corrupt politicians, which reflects the illusion of agency. Their political voice exists only nominally. In reality, they remain structurally silenced, a hallmark of subalternity. Second is ignorance and power hierarchies. Sorry for this handwriting. I hope you are getting this hierarchies. So the villagers' lack of education and awareness enable the upper caste and political elites to dominate them. Their blind faith in Gandhi and local leaders shows how subaltern populations are socially and politically marginalized, unable to critically engage with the democratic process. So Sanjay Kumar Bag portrays structural oppression continuing under the guise of freedom, right? Third point is symbolic representation of subalternity. So black ink is the symbol that represents superficial participation in democracy and the gap between appearance and reality. The second is Gandhi's image that demonstrates how ideals are co-opted for control, right? And leaving subaltern disempowered. Third is voting rituals, which highlights the ritualistic inclusion of Dalit without genuine empowerment. So you can use these key points and conclude your answer. Through black ink, Sanjay Kumar Bag exposes the persistent marginalization of Dalits within the democratic framework. He demonstrates that while independence promised equality, subaltern communities remain politically, socially, and economically peripheral. The story critiques mainstream politics as performative rather than transformative, showing that Dalits continue to navigate a world where their rights exist more on paper than in practice. Right? So, this is all about for today's class. So, this is the last topic of this Dalit writing paper, which is in your syllabus of semester 5 of English Honours from Delhi University. So, in black ink, which is written by Sanjay Kumar Bag, captures the tragic irony of post independence India. It's a nation free in form but still enslaved in spirit. Through the villagers' faith and their endless waiting for Gandhiji, that Bag exposes how Gandhian ideals of truth, equality, non violence, compassion have been reduced to mere symbols on currency notes and political speeches. The story becomes a mirror reflecting the betrayal of moral values and continued suffering of the marginalized who still wait for justice that never arrives. Buddha Dada's innocent faith, Sagadia Dadi's confusion, and the Gandhi's hypocrisy together reveal a haunting reality that Gandhi's body may have gone, but his absence still defines the nation's consciousness. Ultimately, black ink is not just about waiting for Gandhi, it's about waiting for truth to return, for humanity to awaken, and for the real spirit of freedom to be reborn. So Sanjay Kumar Bag reminds us that until justice, equality, and compassion truly prevail, India's waiting will never end. Thank you so much for being here. If you found this class helpful and insightful, so please don't forget to um, like this video. Please share it with your friends and classmates, and subscribe the channel for more insightful lectures in future. Thank you so much.